What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the State of the Program series, brought to you by the Crossover U College Hoops Talk podcast. My name is Kanaye, and I'm joined with Josh. Today we get to talk about the Auburn Tigers. Really solid year for Bruce Pearl, of course, making it to the Final Four. Arguably the greatest Auburn team in program history he had this past year with the likes of Kanaye Broome, who was in the race for the National Player of the Year trophy the entire year. You have guys like Tahad Pettiford, who's an outstanding freshman off the bench for them. But, of course, they ran into the eventual national champions, Florida Gators, in the Final Four. Ran into Walter Clayton Jr., definitely hurt. But they lost a lot. They've also added a ton in the transfer portal this year. So we're going to talk about those things. We're going to talk about how we feel about Bruce Pearl and where Auburn stacks up in both the SEC and nationally going into next year, and just what the vibes are for the fans that are be rocking Nelville this upcoming season. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast or anything else you see on this channel, please engage with our videos in any way you can, whether it's liking them, subscribing to our channel, or just telling other people about it. It really helps with growing what we do here at the Crossover. So let's get started with what Auburn has lost. They're losing their entire starting lineup of comprised of Kanaye Broome, Chad Baker-Mazara, Miles Kelly, Denver Jones, and Dylan Cardwell. Definitely hurts a lot. Top of those guys are losing Chaney Johnson, Ja'Kai Howard, Jaheim Hudson, guys who are really, really important off the bench for them this past year. And I just think losing all of that is so hard to ignore, just considering you made a Final Four with guys who had so much veteran leadership and experience.
Yeah, this is a really big loss if you're talking to anybody. Losing Johnny Broome, who's 18 a game, having the honestly surprise transfer loss from Chad Baker-Mazara. This is a guy that I thought was going to be an Auburn forever guy. Miles Kelly, Denver Jones, Chaney Johnson, Dylan Cardwell, they all graduated. Jackie Howard, a young freshman talent alongside Tahad, transferred as well. I really feel like this is kind of a bigger than talked about team loss because the only remaining player is Tahad Pettiford. And
Right.
Pettiford wasn't even a confirmed guy. So there was a good chance that Auburn was going to have nobody returning from this team. Honestly, give me a 5. That's a really rough loss.
Yeah, I was also going to go 5. I think what definitely hurts their case a lot more was Chad Baker-Mazara was definitely someone you could have gotten back. He was granted the waiver to play another year of college basketball. He was someone who said, I want to run it back as an Auburn Tiger. Bruce Pearl flirted with the idea too, talking about how Baker-Mazara could be running point for them this upcoming season. Of course, we know how it kind of all went down with them throwing out the higher number to Keyshawn Hall and Baker-Mazara being a little frustrated about that, just considering he is a returner. He would have been a returner. Of course, you can fault Baker-Mazara for signing the deal and then opting out of it, and just the whole mess that the entire situation was. But Baker-Mazara was definitely someone who they should have gotten back. Definitely could have. Being a third-team All-SEC guy, really good defender, one of the best isolation scorers in the country. Losing him hurts a lot on top of everything you lost that we just talked about. I think a 5 is more than a fair score to give them for this.
Certainly.
Now, to get into the ads, this is where it gets pretty exciting for Auburn. I think by far the most important thing this offseason for them was returning Tahad Pettiford. He came off the bench this past year as a sixth man and averaged nearly 14 a game, added 3 assists. He really showed up in every big game for Auburn this past year, and he's someone who's going to be in a starting role this year, make a big leap. I definitely believe could be on All-American watch. In terms of transfers, they went a really interesting route where they largely went after JUCO and D2 guys. They did land Keyshawn Hall, was the leading scorer in the Big 12 this past year at UCF at almost 19. I know his nickname is Big Guard. He's going to bring a really unique skill set to the table for Bruce Pearl in this Auburn program. But like I mentioned, they went the D2 and JUCO route. I'll let Josh talk about how he feels about some of the guys they've added regarding that.
Listen, this one's a hard one. This is kind of, I would say, the weirdest additions that we're probably going to talk about this entire set. Obviously, Keyshawn Hall's a big addition. But UCF has some question marks. It was last chance U last year. Don't really know how that's going to factor in. 19 a game's great, though. Can't ignore it. Keyshawn Murphy, the other Keyshawn in this list, averaged 12 at Mississippi State. He has the SEC experience. Evan Overton played in that pretty good Texas Tech team. But then things get a little blurry. Elijah Freeman was a well-sought-after prospect, but he's transferring from the D2 level. Don't know how that works. Then Abdul Bashir and Emeka Oporam are JUCO guys. I get it, Chad Baker-Mazara was JUCO as well, and he blossomed. But I don't know if every JUCO guy is a Chad Baker-Mazara. Even for a guy like Bruce Pearl, who finds the diamonds in the diamonds in the diamonds. Like, I don't know how on earth you find guys like Abdul Bashir with any other coach. Gotta give it to Bruce Pearl, but I don't know how it is. Maybe that's just me, but but I've never even seen this work out. Great freshman additions, though. Caden Magwood, Sebastian Adams, Simon Walker, all ESPN top 100 guys, and then Philip Jovic, an international prospect, rounds out the system. It's a good class. It's one of the better additions in the SEC, but the questions are big. So
Yeah, most definitely.
I don't really know what to think about it. I'll give it a 7 just based off of what I can trust in Bruce Pearl and just the fact that the Keyshawn's in Overton and honestly Elijah Freeman are good, and then keeping Dahad is a blessing.
Most definitely. I think you pretty much hit on a lot of the points there. Well, when you're recruiting guys from the D2 JUCO mid-major level, you're always stepping up to the plate. Sometimes you either strike out or you hit a home run. It's really no guarantee that you're going to have another Chad Baker-Mazar out of one of those D2 or JUCO guys. But like you mentioned, getting Todd back was so important. On top of that, the freshman class is one of the better ones in the SEC. You're also bringing over Philip Jovic, who is kind of the wild card on this roster. He's coming from overseas. Really, again, there's no metric for how those guys are rated coming over to the U.S., but he does play pro ball, so maybe he has a little bit to bring to the table for them. But I think overall, I would also agree that a 7 would be a fair score to give Auburn there. Now for coaching, how do you feel about Bruce Pearl heading into this next season?
Bruce Pearl last year made me feel like he was the best coach in the SEC. And then Todd Golden won it all. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the guy. He's like I said before, if he's finding JUCO guys and turning them into complete studs at the SEC, that's insane work. Can he win the big game, though? I don't know. He had the greatest team Auburn's ever assembled, and they lost in the Final Four. So I don't understand fully what he can do different. I like him a lot. I'll give him an 8. He's definitely a top 2, maybe 3 coach in the SEC besides Nate Oates and Todd Golden.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like how you mentioned, Bruce Pearl's struggled a little bit with winning the big game in his career, but nonetheless, I think last year proved that he can coach at a really, really high level, getting the Auburn back to another Final Four for the first time since 2019. But again, there's a lot of questions with this roster this year. I don't know if he is going to continue to be able to work the magic he did with Chad Baker-Mazar and transform these D2 JUCO level guys into studs. Who can make all SEC teams the way Baker-Mazar did. And that kind of brings me to my point. I think we should hit on what we think the starting lineup is going to be this year. I believe both me and Josh have a lineup of Tahad Pettiford, Kevin Overton, Elijah Freeman, Keyshawn Hall, and Keyshawn Murphy, grinding out the 5 for them. It's a really solid lineup, but again, the questions are there as to how those guys are going to play at the high major level in terms of the D2 and JUCO transfers. But I do like Bruce Pearl as a coach. I think he has a really good defensive mentality and identity that he's always kept year in and year out. I know he has a lot of trust in Tahad Pettiford, and I think Tahad has a lot to prove this year, and he's going to do the best he can for Pearl. But I do think that Bruce Pearl does still stack up really, really well in the SEC coaching ranks. And for this, I'm willing to go up to an 8.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a fair thing. And listen, a lot of caution. I have no clue how on earth these JUCO guys are going to be, even Elijah Freeman. But this starting lineup could be a ton of different things. We could be completely wrong, and I'm perfectly fine with it. And because of how open this is, I don't know the ceiling of this team. This could be a very similar team to last year with national championship ambitions, or it could be a team that gets eliminated in the first round. There's a lot that can go on with this squad.
Most definitely. And you mentioned how they could end up ranking or stacking up nationally. How do you view them going to the SEC this year?
I feel pretty good. They're probably in line for a 3-4 spot. They're not going to beat a Kentucky. They're not going to beat a Florida. But they can beat it. They can go toe-to-toe with an Arkansas. I feel good with them against their hometown rivals in Bama. I think they could probably win a game or 2 against them. And overall, they should be fine in the SEC as a whole. I think because we gave Arkansas an 8, it's probably fair to also give them an 8.
Yeah, I think so too. You mentioned that they'll probably open up as a top 3 to 5 team in the SEC going into conference play. I personally view them as the 4th best team going in because I do think they do have talent on their roster. You just don't know if those mid-major JUCO D2 guys are going to work. But again, you're going to have so much opportunity to play in big quad 1 resume building games this year. As the SEC should probably be at the top of the conference hierarchy once again this year. So I think an 8 would probably be a good score.
Easily.
Now, how do you feel if you're an Auburn Tigers fan? Personally, I'm kind of up in the air. You did just make a Final Four, but you really missed out on a big opportunity to go and win a national championship, bring one back to Melville Arena. But At the same time, Bruce Pearl seems really, really hyped up with the roster he's built. I've seen the videos Auburn's men's basketball's Instagram has put out of them landing their transfers and Bruce Pearl being all fired up about it. It's clear that a lot of the fans feel pretty hyped up about some of the guys they've got, and Bruce Pearl clearly is as well. But from an outsider view, as someone who isn't an Auburn fan, I'm just not all too sure. I don't know what their ceiling is. Like you mentioned, they could be something similar to last year where they're really dominant in the regular season and could go to another Final Four, or they could be a first weekend exit team.
And honestly, you know what? I think a lot of Auburn fans are going to hate this, but I'm going to give this team the Alabama treatment. Alabama 2 years ago made the Final Four. They came back with a really good roster and didn't win it all. They were the team we expected to do it and didn't happen. Auburn's on the same boat, but you got to follow up a Final Four season with something similar, an Elite Eight at best would probably be nice. But I don't know. I'm going to be real. This team has too many questions that I don't know about. I trust in Bruce Pearl more than I trust in Nate Oates right now, at least. It's hard to say. Maybe Auburn fans understand things better than I do, and I think that's probably why I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. I kind of want to say a 7. I'm fine with the 6. It's kind of a tough call.
Yeah, it's tough because another thing, too, is you have really no continuity whatsoever from last year's roster to this year. So your only returner, like you mentioned, Josh, is Tahad Pettiford. And while I think Tahad Pettiford has a first-team All-American ceiling this year, definitely someone who I'm going to have on probably my first-team All-American list whenever we do put those out. I just don't know. You have talent on paper, but you don't know if it all fits together. And it's important to have guys that continue to bring the leadership and culture that you've built. And Tahad is still so young, only being a sophomore this upcoming year. And him being the only returner worries me a lot, not more than slightly. And I'm just worried about it. I think 6 is probably where I'm going to go for vibes heading into this year.
Yeah, 6 is definitely for vibes as well. Maybe that's once again a personal thing. I feel like if I was an Auburn fan or was from the state of Alabama, I might have said a 7. But there's just a little bit too much of a concern here. There's a lot of insecurity. It's why we didn't put Auburn any higher. And there's a lot to like about this team. I'm not putting down the opportunities for this team to be that good. And to be real with you, we didn't look at Auburn the same way we looked at Auburn last year. I didn't see Johnny Bruce being that guy that he was. And we didn't know when Tahad was going to be one of the best freshmen in the league, or in D1 last year. Maybe they surprise us again, but I think it's safe to assume a 6 in terms of just we're going to trust Bruce Pearl, or we're going to keep him on a 6-foot pole. I don't think he's going to go all the way.
Most definitely. And I think that's pretty much going to wrap up everything we have on Auburn and the State of the Tigers program going to next year. I am really, really excited to see Tahad Pettiford back in action. If you follow the channel, you know he is one of my favorite players in the sport. Super excited to see what he does. Excited to see Bruce Pearl back on the court, as fired up as ever. And I am really curious to see how these D2 and JUCO transfers end up working out. But again, that's going to take care of everything we have for this episode today. As always, please engage with our videos in any way you can. And until next episode, see you all next time.